Tanzanians are currently participating in an election that President Samia Suluhu Hassan is expected to win after candidates from two leading opposition parties were barred from standing. Hello and a very warm welcome to this live coverage of Tanzania's 2025 election. My name is Giorgio Kachi, and I'm coming to you from our offices here in Bonn, Germany. Many thanks for joining this live coverage. Now, in addition to the presidential election, voters across the East African nation are choosing members of the country's 400-seat parliament and lawmakers in the semi-autonomous Zanzibar archipelago. Our reporters on the ground are following this historic exercise, and we shall be giving you real-time updates on this major exercise. Remember, this is DW Africa, and this coverage is live on our Facebook page and also YouTube page, DW Africa. Now, my colleague Isaac Kalechi, all the way from Ghana, is also with us, and he's making sure this entire live coverage is a success. Isaac, maybe if you can say hi to our listeners and the viewers across the platforms.
So yes, hi and welcome to this coverage. I'm sure it's going to be an interesting coverage because in Tanzania is a big meet in East Africa, and I'm sure everyone is following the elections. Yeah.
Isaac, elections are always interesting, and especially to cover as a journalist. Would you say that?
Yes, it is. Elections are always interesting events, right? We want to see the action on the ground. People are choosing their leaders. These leaders decide their future and everything that they become. The government can decide who your sleeping place, decide depending on exactly what's happening. So, it's an important element of our life as a people because democracy has come to stay and we have to choose our leaders. So it's always interesting, and elections are big deals.
I'm happy you mentioning that it is an important aspect in our life, and the centrality of elections cannot be overemphasized, Isaac. It's a civic duty that everybody has to partake. And of course, this is a clarion call to all Tanzanians who are eligible to vote. Remember, the country of over 60 million people have more than 37 million registered voters. So it is a clarion call for all of them to come out and do their civic duty. Many thanks, Isaac, and I'm happy that we are collaborating into making this a reality. So to begin, Tanzania's presidential vote is being held without the leading opposition party, we must stress. That is Chadema, whose leader Tundu Lissu is on trial for treason, charges he has denied. Now, the Electoral Commission disqualified Chadema in April after it refused to sign an electoral code of conduct. Now, the commission also disqualified Luhaga Mpina, the candidate for second largest party, that is the ACT Wazalendo, after an objection from the Attorney General, leaving only candidates from minor parties to compete against President Samia Suluhu. And for all due fairness, let's have a short profile of who is running for the top seat and what are they promising Tanzanians. Are participating in today's elections, and here is what they are promising. We begin with the incumbent President Samia Suluhu Hassan of CCM, the ruling party, and she focuses on continuity of reforms, dialogue, diplomacy, and promises job creation, health, education access, and national health insurance completion. Another female candidate is Saum Hussein Rashid of UDP, who emphasizes household wealth distribution, agro-processing, and farmer profitability. Gombo Samandito Gombo of CUF promises free education from nursery to university, universal free healthcare, pension system overhaul, youth employment, and simplification of tax compliance. Kunje Gombala Muiru of AAFP emphasizes constitutional obedience, agricultural transformation, women's land rights, and mechanization in farming. NRA's Hassan Almas campaigns on moral authority, peace, and prioritizing national harmony over ambitions. Costa Kibondo of Chama Makini pledges universal health insurance, youth land allocation for agriculture and agribusiness development. Doyo Hassan Doyo of NLD advocates austerity in government spending, maternal health care, and reform in hospital billing. Abdallah Kadeger of UPDP stresses on land ownership, citizen empowerment, and media freedom. Majaliwa Kiara of SAU focuses on public health tied to farming practices, curriculum reform, and youth-driven industry clusters. David Mwai-Jojele of CCK proposes dignified retirement for government workers through combined savings schemes. Mazrui Alfan of UMD calls for decentralization of education management to regional governments and youth industrial skills. Wilson Elias Mulumber of ADC vows to restore public infrastructure and state industries, free healthcare, electricity, and police housing renovation. Haji Hamis of NCCR Mageuzi highlights corruption as a major threat, promises legal action against corrupt officials, and prioritizes local youth employment. Salum Mwalimu of Chauma seeks to raise minimum wages, restore public service discipline, modernize agriculture, and stabilize produce prices. Eustace Mbatina Ruamugira of TLP highlights economic reforms for hospital functionality, food security, and credit for small entrepreneurs. Abdul Juma Mluyer of DP focuses on social reforms, free childbirth services, curriculum, modernization, and civil servants' motivation. George Basungu of ADA Tadea campaigns for a digital revolution, subsidized cooking gas, and data empowerment for Tanzanians. Now, two of President Samia Suluhu Hassan's main opponents, Tundu Lissu of Chadema and Luhaga Mpina of ACT Wazalendo, are barred from seeking Tanzania's presidency. People contending for the top seat. We know that elections are about fairness and everyone participating must be covered fairly. And that is the responsibility we're currently doing. And there you have it, the presidential candidates who supposedly would give this entire exercise some sort of political legitimacy. Now, since we mentioned our reporters on the ground, of course, we have Imani Henrik Luvanga, who will be joining us later on to tell us what is currently happening. And also Naomi Jeseda will be joining us to tell us what is happening. Of course, the polling has begun in several regions within the country. Remember, more than 37 million Tanzanians are eligible to vote. The voter turnout has been reportedly low in some cities as we are gathering information from our correspondents across the nation. And we shall be getting real-time updates on that event. And of course, the leader who is also participating to retain the seat, we've already said that he is tipped to lead the country and win this election. That is President Samia Suluhu Hassan has already cast her vote. And she had this to say. Maybe Isaac, if you can play that clip for us.
Following, I would like to sincerely thank all journalists for their commendable work. I have been closely following the entire electoral process since this morning, and I am pleased to see comprehensive media coverage across the nation. After observing the proceedings and feeling confident in the process, I felt it was my time to step forward and fulfill my civic duty. I have cast my vote. Now, I strongly urge all Tanzanians who have not yet done so to come out, exercise their right, and vote for the leaders of their choice. Let us complete this democratic exercise diligently so we can collectively focus on advancing the development of our nation. Once again, I extend my gratitude to the media and kindly request that you continue to keep the country informed while encouraging every eligible citizen to participate fully in this important civic responsibility.
Na nimeona katika vyombo mbalimbali bado vinahamasisha watu waende wakapige kura. Basi niwashukuru kwa hili. Asanteni sana.
president, the incumbent president, who is also vying in this particular election. Remember, she is contesting against 16 other candidates, and we've already mentioned what other candidates are offering the country. And 37 million Tanzanians are eligible to vote, and the voting exercise began in earnest at 6 a.m., and the polls are expected to close 6 p.m. Tanzanian time. And of course, stressing that over 37 million Tanzanians are eligible to vote in the general election, yet many risk being denied, the opportunity because of exclusion of opposition parties. And this is a subject issue in this election. And one opposition supporter spoke to DW where he plans to boycott. And we worked on this piece about him together with Naomi Jasera, who will be joining us shortly. And let's hear this because it resonates with many voters who may not participate in this election due to their candidates being denied fairness to participate. Repression and political exclusion dominate the election landscape in Tanzania this year. President Samia Suluhu Hassan and her ruling Chama cha Mapinduzi party are expected to retain power following the disqualification of key opposition parties. Frederick Mbwambo was born in 1994, around 2 years after multi-party politics returned to Tanzania. His family is loyal to the opposition Chadema party. The university graduate who runs a stone-crushing business is also an active party member. Mbwambo says he will boycott the election on Wednesday because his preferred candidate, Tundu Lissu, is in prison.
The barring of opposition leaders from participating in the election has not dampened my spirit, but has strengthened my resolve. Our struggle is not only for this election, but for democracy and the nation's prosperity. It also reveals the ruler's fear of honest opposition, showing a strong popular demand for change that has been suppressed by the state instruments.
When Mbwambo was a first-time voter in 2015, the candidate for Chadema, Edward Lowassa, won nearly 40% of the vote. It was the party's best ever performance. Now, at the age of 31, he knows that regaining such momentum will take time.
I expect strong popular momentum in the next 5 years to continue demanding systemic reforms and an effective system that allows parties to compete in fair elections.
Over 37 million Tanzanians are eligible to vote, yet many risk being disenfranchised. The ruling CCM has been in power for 64 years without any serious opposition. This time round, the main opposition candidates Tundu Lissu of Chadema and Luhaga Mpina ACT Wazalendo are barred from running. Still, Mbwambo remains optimistic.
History teaches us that even if parties are restricted by systems, the people can start a movement that will seek truth and build better democratic conditions in the country.
Discomfort over exclusion of the opposition is being felt among some CCM voters too. Amina Juma, a wood business owner in Dar es Salaam, is among them.
I'm not happy to see the opposition denied a chance to participate in the election. But I believe my party, CCM, has good policies to bring development to the country.
The mother of four is happy that her candidate, the incumbent Samia Suluhu Hassan, looks set to be East Africa's first female president with a commanding majority. And where would that leave the opposition?
I believe that after this election, the opposition will continue to exist. However, they need to reorganize and engage in issue-based politics rather than complaints.
Political analysts have been warning that Hassan government's crackdown on its opposition risks plunging Tanzania into political instability amid growing public discontent. Very well, more than bread and butter issues that are social economic issues that normally, take center stage during elections. Political exclusion is a key issue in Tanzania in this year's election. And as we speak, there are few voters at polling stations in Tanzania's major cities as main challengers to President Samia Suluhu Hassan were either jailed or barred from running. And as we've heard from that report by Naomi, is that, of course, there are people who will be boycotting the election because their candidates are not running or participating. Now, the government and police made repeated threats that protests will not be tolerated, and they've stationed tanks around the commercial capital, Dar es Salaam, as we speak, to prevent any unrest. And we shall be joined by our reporters shortly. And earlier, before we started this live coverage, I spoke to Professor Dr. Makame Haji. He is the Vice Chancellor, State University of Zanzibar. On this topic of political exclusion, let's listen into this particular interview. Elections are underway. And Prof, how can Tanzania reconcile voting in a multi-party election widely perceived as dominated by the Chama cha Mapinduzi after 64 years of single-party rule?
Well, talking about political rallies in Tanzania, it is in fact both the historical and political issue. And this had been a question of discussion, but again is a question of understanding the realities in Tanzania. Tanzania, of course, in this feature can reconcile the paradox of recognizing the multi-party election and the CCM dominance as a reflection of both the historical community and the struggle for democratic pluralism. We all understand that for many years, Tanzania was under the single party system. And it was just in 1992 where the decision to move into multi-party democracy was taken. So the Tanzania political landscape remains shaped by Chama cha Mapinduzi, which is currently the ruling party in Tanzania, with its deep institutional roots, as we understand the political movements starting from the rallies in struggle for independence by Mwalimu Julius Nyerere and Abeid Amani Karume, with the parties like TANU before independence, and a party like ASP, Afro Shirazi Party, on the side of Zanzibar before the revolution. But again, these parties have managed to create a kind of cultural confidence and a political legitimacy over the whole Tanzania. Its roots are very deep, and it controls over the state apparatus, means all angles of state instruments actually was guided by the political power, by the CCM. Now, when it comes a question of a multi-party system, it is still understood that the people in Tanzania still have a confidence with the ruling party, CCM. But again, we also have another group who have chosen to move to opposition parties. The areas of dominance, therefore, has led many observers to decide whether Tanzania system is electoral authoritarianism or in reality a reflection of national trust, historical legitimacy, and consistency delivery. But of course, there's a question to be raised here in looking at the matter in depth. why CCM dominates aligns with a democratic choice. Probably we have a legacy of liberalization and unity, which is the number one matter of CCM. Not just a political party, but
allow
it
me to interrupt.
contains to have.
Allow me to interrupt you, and I mean, it may be well understood that maybe there is confidence within among Tanzanians to this ruling party, but it's concerning ahead of this election. Why then jail opposition figures? Why then refuse them to participate in a free and fair environment?
The politics in Tanzania, and in fact, it's not just in Tanzania, within all of these East African region now, has become a matter of law and a matter of politics. Means we have a legal battle within the politics. Every party now has centered the law and make use of the court in looking for the possibility of winning the confidence and the trust of the people. We have seen a lot of examples by the Chama cha Mapinduzi using the law, taking the political party's leader to the court, complaining on the technicalities of the law, technicalities of the procedure, but the same is also applied by the political parties. A lot of cases have been filed before the law by the political parties, complaining about the state power, complaining about Chama cha Mapinduzi, but we also have experienced a number of cases that complains against the Electoral Commission. This is to say, in Tanzania now, in reality, election is not seems as just a political issue looking for the legitimacy, but it's also involved as a legal battle by the parties and the institutions, trying to center the court in a place where it acts like a referee, judging who have the right, who have the power, who have the reason to argue, and therefore give an opportunity to either extend its power or being subjected by the law in a matter that some of the political leaders are now in jail. Some of the political leaders who decided to engage into a political rally have been stopped by the court injunction, and therefore the law is in the middle between the realities of political competition and the legitimacy in area. People would love to see they have multiple choices to see what they want and who are the leaders they want to place in their country. Now, when it comes a point where political leaders are jailed, some of the supporters, particularly those who support these leaders, would not be happy to see their leaders are in jail. But again, taking the same point, what happens to these leaders? What is the reason of them being jailed? Is it because they stand as a political opposition, or because they confront and violate the laws in the country? But again, those who have been trusted to be frontliners, to push the political strength forward, they tend to be criminals. They are charged by the criminals, they are charged by the crimes. And this is not what people would love to see. They want to see that the state is experiencing political democracy by giving an equal opportunity to both the ruling and the opposition parties. but both leaders from the ruling parties and opposition parties has to stand on areas where they should not disappoint the people.
So Prof, are you in a way trying to say that opposition leaders are criminals? Because I'm not understanding.
What is my point? That opposition leaders have to see the realities of the law, and because we have laws in place, what they're supposed to look is to interpret the law accordingly by their own actions. Now, when actions are against the procedures, when their actions are against the laws, now who are to be blamed? But again, who is disappointed? If I am supporter of a leader whom I trust that he will stand for my interest, has become a violator of the law.
I mean,
now,
that we cannot really ascertain
into court.
Because, but Prof, that we cannot really ascertain because there is an ongoing case, and because of sub judice, we cannot talk on the merits of that particular case. So we cannot outrightly say that they are violators of the law. But it's concerning that they are being charged ahead of the election, and there is one cannot but think of political motive behind that.
Yeah, it's true, because I'm not judging like these are the criminals in a place of being guilty of any offense. But what I'm saying that what is the reason of being charged? Are they charged without any offense? We have seen a lot of arguments given by the political parties that the leaders are arrested, they are charged with offense, they are denied the bails, and they are restricted in not to enjoy their rights to engage in political activities. But the ruling party is silent on that. The state has taken its lead, saying these are the people whom seems to be accused of actions that violate the peace in the countries, actions that violate the law of the countries. Now, the battle I was talking about is in place. That we have the law that determines who have the right to engage into political activities. We have the law that determines who have the opportunity to compete. Now, if the law is used as an angle to determine who has to move and who has to stop, this is what the criticisms can be looked at. So, in a nutshell, we have a state in place which is not a political party by itself as a state, and we have political parties which are struggling and fighting to govern the state. Now, those who are in power, they are interpreting the law to stabilize the state. Those who are in opposition, they are interpreting the law to look for the opportunity of ruling the country. Now, the battle of the law is there between the opposition and the ruling parties. But the state as a referee has put it in a court that the court has to decide whether there is a legitimacy or there is no legitimacy. And now we are looking at the result of the politicization of the law, and how the law can determine the future of Tanzania when it comes to politics.
But isn't it concerning to you, Professor, that For example, the ACT Wazalendo presidential candidate who was vindicated by the High Court to run, and yet the Electoral Commission denied him the opportunity to run in violation of a court order. Isn't that concerning to you?
It is a concern when it is proved that there is a denial or arbitrary denial of the order. Electoral Commission or the Electoral Commission has the authority, because it is the institution that has a power to allow who has to be presidential candidates. Now, the court does not have that power, but the court has a mandate to look on the legality and the procedure. If the procedures are followed, the commission has no room to deny. But if the procedures were not followed, then the commission had the right to say there is a violation of this procedure, and therefore the Electoral Commission has a mandate to not to allow the one who has gone against the procedures to run for the election. Now, what happened by the court? The court has done all its function, but because it does not have a mandate to say this has to be allowed or not, it end up giving the task to the commission that this is your mandate and you have to rule whether the ACT Wazalendo has to contest or not. And this is what happened to the commission, because the matter was returned to the commission. The commission exercised its mandate not to allow. Now, if the political parties are complaining about the decision of the Electoral Commission, then this could be the issue, whether the Electoral Commission exercised its power effectively or there is something that is hidden behind. But of course, on the reason by the Electoral Commission, it exercises the power by looking at the procedures. Now, if the candidate failed to observe the procedures in a place, we should expect the decision by the Electoral Commission as it is.
Yeah, fair enough. But let's proceed. Therefore, can President Samia Suluhu Hassan's campaign promise of work and dignity convince voters amid concerns about growing authoritarianism and perceived voter apathy?
There's always change by the Chama cha Mapinduzi, and these changes always happen in every regime. We have seen the regimes before, by Nyerere, by Mwinyi, and the other presidents who were in a place in Tanzania. They come up with the different slogans. Now, we had a slogan by the predecessor of Samia Suluhu Hassan, Dr. Magufuli, that said, hapa kazi tu, means we still continue to build the nation.
Is always
Now, Samia Suluhu Hassan has inherited from this slogan, and of course implemented all what was in the CCM Manifesto 2020-2025. In a 2025-2030, Samia Suluhu has come up with another slogan of work and dignity.
Very well. Of course, as you can tell, we're having internet issues and news just coming in. Internet monitor, that is NetBlocks, has said that live network data shows that a nationwide disruption to internet connectivity in Tanzania is on during this election time. And these are realities that we face while covering elections. And if you're joining us right now, it's just to update you that over 37 million Tanzanians have a date with destiny and a choice that will govern their country in the 5 coming years. And of course, incumbent Samia Suluhu Hassan is expected to win after 2 major opposition party candidates were barred from running. This live coverage is coming to you from our offices here in Bonn, Germany. And of course, you can follow us on our YouTube page, DW Africa, and also on Facebook, DW Africa. Isaac Kalechi is the one making this a reality. Isaac, if you can come back to the screen just to dissect about what the good professor was saying before we can embark on our reporters on the ground to tell us what is happening in the voting exercise. And Isaac, this is a major issue in this election, political exclusion and running to an election without key competition. What is your view? How are you taking it from, that region in West Africa?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same story across many countries, even in West Africa. We know some countries in West Africa have been able to move on from such a spectacle where maybe the opposition has to be muzzled out, from the process. I think there's some kind of improvement where you will not necessarily see some kind of narrative that shows that maybe the ruling party is just trying to suppress the opposition and not get them involved in the electoral process. Let's say their leaders being prosecuted here and there ahead of elections. So we'll say, yes, that is an improvement. But in another way, we still have the ruling parties or the incumbents trying as much as they can to have that kind of supremacy just so that it benefits them to win. But hearing from the prof, I guess there are 2 narratives that he's putting across. That yes, he understands that yes, these opposition leaders are being prosecuted, but he thinks that they are being prosecuted because of crimes they may have committed. I mean, still the courts have to prove that. And so that, yes, we have a challenge, a dilemma that should people who flout the laws of the country be allowed to go because they are opposition leaders, or they need to face the law. But again, also the issue obviously is that these are political leaders and you don't need to send this wrong signal that they are being actually prosecuted because you don't want them to partake in the process, right? So that, for example, we need to reach to a point where cases like this involving political leaders ought to be speed up quickly so that everything is cleared, and then we don't see them closer to elections, so that we see them being seen as being persecuted, right, instead of being prosecuted. So it's a very delicate issue. I think that a lot of countries have to improve. We need to change the narrative. We need to be able to, yes, prosecute people, but also see the larger interest of the country. But also, again, I think he mentions that it's important for political leaders also to abide by the laws of the country, right?
Yeah, that's
not
very
to
true.
be seen, not to be seen to just try to break the laws because they are opposition, and they think that obviously will mean that they will have the sympathy of people around and all that. I mean, it's a very delicate issue. I think laws must operate, but also political system must be free for people to participate freely, and people get a choice to decide who their leaders are.
Yeah, that's sharp enough, Isaac, and many thanks. Isaac is joining us from Ghana, Accra, and Isaac is the one making sure that this live coverage is a success. Many thanks, Isaac, for that. And before we got to that, we were speaking to Dr. Makame Haji. He is the Vice Chancellor of the State University of Zanzibar, SUZA, on the topic of political exclusion. As we mentioned before, we're following bit by bit and live updates on what is happening on the ground. And as promised earlier, our reporters are tucked all over the nation of over 60 million people. And remember, 37.6 million are eligible to vote. If all of them will turn out, that is another subject of conversation. And we will wait and see as the poll will be coming to close at 6 p.m. Tanzanian time. So at this moment, let's be joined by our reporter, Imani Luvanga, who, of course, visited the polling stations, and her general observation on what is going on.
Unlike other days, Dar es Salaam is always a busy city, but today the city is so calm. Shops are closed, different offices are not offering services today, but also the roads are very open. Unlike other days, always Dar es Salaam is a traffic jam city, but today the roads are so open. I've visited 3 polling stations so far, but the turn up is a bit disappointing. There's not so many people in different stations, and I've been told that maybe people will come later. So we are still waiting. I am at Mikocheni Primary School polling station, and I have spoken to some of the voters, and here is their experience.
My name is Emmanuel Ibn Kachara. Today, they've done very well compared to the other voting processes. Well, first of all, it's very easy if you don't find where the post is through the number that's logged over the phone. Yeah, so I enter in my phone and they select the center, which is Taasisi, number C2. So once you go there, then you go straight to the point. Then you see those assistants of the voters. Then they give you that direction. First of all, you have to go there and you take your card, that's voter's ID. Then they look at that and they check if maybe you are the same as the name is. And after that, then they check the list. Once maybe your name appears right, the one that they've seen on your ID, then they tick. After taking that process, then you go straight. They give you, we given the papers, whether you vote for president and
the ballot paper.
The ballot paper, yeah. You given three of them. Then you take them. Then you go this somewhere that is very private, where you can take your vote. After voting, then they will give you you toss your hand, so you get the symbol that you've already voted. Like this one of symbol.
My name is Eric Isai. Yeah, I just came to vote and I find the place is real. The environment is real fine. It just took I think 2 minutes to finish the process. Yeah, I feel like everything is arranged and it just took it didn't took a lot of my time to be here. I'm happy and excited. It's my first time to vote. Yeah. So I'm so excited for this process. I don't know. I just came right now and vote and I'm leaving. So I don't know what was happening in the morning. Yeah, but the good thing I like is I didn't waste so much time here. So I could recommend anyone to come and vote. Yeah, everything is arranged properly. I just met the girl who was confirming my card. First, if I'm really supposed to vote in this poll station, and then I was invited inside. I took those voting sheets. I just went to the voting area, just vote, just like 2 seconds or 2 minutes, and then everything was fine. So I just the arrangement was quite fine.
Thank you.
No,
The 62-day campaign journey concluded yesterday, and today, Tanzania decides. According to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, 37.7 million Tanzanians have registered to vote. Among them, 49,174 are persons with disabilities.
And that is why we are covering it. And if you're just joining us, remember this is DW Africa. You can follow this live coverage of the election, Tanzania election 2025 on our YouTube page, that is DW Africa, and also on our Facebook page, DW Africa. Our team is all over the nation and shall be updating us on what is happening in the country. We've already highlighted that the country's leaders, you can see on the screen, has already cast her vote, rallying calls to Tanzanians to turn out and perform their civic duty. Our reporter Imani Luvanga Henrik, of course, reporting from Dar es Salaam, has updated us on what is going on. And a key highlight is that there is a low voter turnout. And the most important thing, the total registered voters in 2025 numbers about 37.6 million, with the young people comprising a majority of this, and that is about 60% according to the Electoral Commission figures. And despite their large numbers, youth participation is often passive in even the previous elections due to political repression, which is a very key issue in this election, a lack of compelling opposition. Remember, this election, the incumbent President Samia Suluhu is competing, some have been jokingly saying competing against herself, but of course with due fairness, she's competing against 16 other candidates. And we already aired a clip on how and what these candidates are promising to Tanzanians. But back to the youth question, the youth vote remains crucial, especially on issues like unemployment and education. But the political landscape has left many young people and young voters disillusioned and less active than their numbers might suggest. So I mean, we need to speak to them and get to know. And Imani Luvanga had a very interesting conversation on one of our formats called the 77%. Let's just play it into just to understand what the young people want from the leaders.
Shaping Tanzania as the country is heading towards elections. Kicking off the discussion, I would love to start with our youngest panelist, Maureen. You are just finished secondary level of education. What are you guys talking about issues that concerning young people?
The first one is the increased cost of living in the streets. There has been a lot of increasement in our cost of living, but also people are suffering from unemployment. Yeah, but also they are worried if whether or not the politicians are going to deliver and fulfill their promises.
Rukaiya, do you think young people are really concerned in the campaigns and policies that are just giving us?
Of course, like part of the experience, all the policies and everything that has been promised or that they are keeping on promising young people, they're there and have been promising. The issue is the implementation of what those people are promising. So if you speak of the young people, you speak of the good education, good health, shelters, affordable life, and all that are kept in those policies, are kept in that manifesto. The issue is the implementers. Will they implement what they're promising right now?
Humphrey, you are the human rights activist. How are we going to choose qualified people and leaders who will really put young people priorities?
What I would emphasize and encourage is an approach of meritocracy. Meritocracy is an approach of which the government and the system of leadership actually prioritize people based on their merits. It's not based on who I know. It's not based on who is my friend that is in the government position, but what do I have? What do I know? What are my abilities? What are my potentials? This is all that matters. Despite age, we have young people under 20 who are very smarter than the old people in their 40s. What we really want to see is the smartness of people and what they can do for their countries, the vision they have, the mission they have, so as to create such a patriotic and strong country.
This is the ideal, Humphrey, but what's the reality in our society?
The reality is so bad. It's a bit of challenging because for the past 5-10 years, we have this thing that we can call it chawacracy. Chawa, that means I have to flatter, I have to compliment someone, over-compliment actually, so as to get a certain position. So it's no longer a matter of what I can do for my government, but it is the matter of if I commend a certain political leader.
Chawacracy. I think I would love to get more views about chawacracy. What do you have to say, Antipas?
Well, I think this it's ridiculous that nowadays this situation called chawacracy is much more perceived by certain group of people while the other are left behind. The act of giving compliments to the leaders or whatever they have done, it becomes a sin when it is done for the people who belongs to the ruling party. But when it comes to the opposition, it's a different case. But people are praised it. Still, people are given opportunities, but they don't term it as Chawa, by the name called Chawa. People are not named so, while if they come from the opposition party.
Thank you so much. I'll get back to you. Maureen, you are just a young girl, fresh from school. Have you already experienced the so-called chawakras, and what has been your experience?
Definitely yes, and I totally agree with that. In fact, chawacracy, it is very present because in our community I can say we have limited opportunities, especially for us youth. So in order to take a way forward and get to the top where you want to be, you must find someone who, I can say, a big fish who is already successful. Maybe they already have names, and then you get attached into them. And by doing chawacracy, of course, they will recommend you, they will endorse you. That's how people are thinking, especially as the youth.
So, Rukaya, in the streets, people are complaining that those famous people, influential people, people with the in the public eye are the chawa. Do you agree with that?
First, you have to be seen in the TV or heard in the radios. That's the first platform to be a chawa. So if you have that platform, then you can use that influence you have by people saying you, influence them to hear or listen to what you want to tell them. We have you journalists, where now you have transferred from your
journalists.
Yeah. You have transferred from your whatsoever you're supposed to do to the chawacracy because you want maybe your medias to go through and all that.
Okay, moving forward, here we have the student of mass communication. Do you really think media houses and journalists are really doing enough to make sure that young people are going to make the right decision just from what they are hearing, what they are watching from the media houses and journalists producing?
Speaking from the media personality perspective, I think they're trying their best. But to the other perspective, I think there's limited information to the society, especially youth, because we now experience a lot of information through a digital platform, those which we cannot get to the mainstream media.
I see the other hand, this side. Do you want to contribute about the media role?
Yeah. For myself, the media house itself, it's not enough to make the young people to participate active in election, but it's all about the media house to teach the citizen how to differentiate between the news which is true and those opinions of the people.
I've seen another hand this side. Wow, what do you have to say?
Sidhani kama waandishi wengi wanashindwa kuwapa taarifa zilizo sahihi.
Maria is just saying that she feel like journalists are really capable of doing what they're supposed to do, but they feel unsafe, and the media houses themselves do not protect journalists in the media houses and the newsrooms. I've just seen the hand from the back bencher. Speaking about digital spaces, now X has been banned out, Clubhouse as well, Telegram as well. Is this also play like a setback to young people, especially in expressing yourself in social media?
I think so, yes, because X, Clubhouse and other social media like that, they have been banned in Tanzania because those are the platforms which have the most of the powers to influence the people. But now we see those youth and other people, they transformed and come back to Instagram and social media like TikTok. As you see, TikTok have produced most content, political content that makes youth to express their ideas on political issues.
Thank you so much. What do you have to say?
The impact of young people to this election. Yes, according to the last census, it's about 34% of the Tanzania are the young people ranging from 15 to 35 years old. So simply means that even the large number of voters are coming from the young people. So from my point of view, from my standing point, I want to encourage also my fellow young people to understand that this is their time. Power is ability to influence. So this is a time of politicians to try to influence the young generation. So in the young generation, it's their time to choose between those politicians who influence them well. So it's their time. We don't want to see young people in the coming 5 years, they still lamenting, blaming to their government. This is their time. going and vote. Choose your party, choose your side. And if things going well, it's up to you. If things going bad, it's up to you, because now it's your time.
So, Rukaiya, what do you think should be done to make sure that young people are participating in political space?
Currently, let them express whatever they feel they're supposed to be heard by the ones who are supposed to implement their promises. So let people express their feelings during this time. And with that, we are going to let those young people participate in one way or another thing.
Thank you so much. And this is the end of our 77% street debate here in Dar es Salaam. You have heard what are the desires of the young people, what do they talk about, what are their concerns, but also what they wish to see after the leaders being elected in October. Thank you so much for watching. This is Imani Henry.
Very well. What a powerful conversation that Imani Luvanga had with young people in Tanzania on their key issues. And as we've said, that a total registered number of voters in Tanzania stands at 37.6 million people, with the youth comprising a majority of this number. And we're talking about 60% of young people registered to and eligible to vote in this election. And despite these large numbers, young people's participation is always passive, as we've already seen in previous elections, due to, of course, political repression, one may, argue, lack of compelling opposition. Like right now, two main opposition leaders are not participating, and therefore some are arguing that it defeats the purpose why we should actually go and stand and queue for this election, which may appear as if we're just endorsing the ruling party. But of course, their issues are, of course, crucial, and there are issues like unemployment, education. But the political landscape has left many of them disillusioned and less active than their numbers might suggest. So right now, we are being joined by Isaac Mugabi. I'm always so happy to introduce Isaac. And I would like to see the other Isaac also appearing on screen, because I like to see two Isaacs. Yeah, so Isaac, many thanks for joining us. So before we get to the big Isaac, let's go to the other Isaac. Isaac, what do you make of Imani's conversation with the young people in Tanzania?
I think it's a very insightful conversation because you clearly can see exactly the aspirations of these young people, their mindsets, the things that really matter to them, and how they want to see their country moving to the future, right? And they spoke about very delicate issues that I think the leaders have to pay attention to, so that, again, we could have that transition. Sometimes young people have a lot of aspirations. The Gen Zs have a lot of things running through their minds. And sometimes people in political leadership roles, or let's say those who are advancing age, obviously may not necessarily understand these aspirations. And I think there is a need for them to meet them halfway. But I think that is point that are a very major issues. And for example, you just announced about the internet that has actually gone down in Tanzania, and you clearly can see that even some social media platforms that are very useful to these young people to express themselves, those platforms are not there for them to really do what they have to do. And I think that
this is their space, Isaac, so to speak.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and I think the leaders have to listen to them. The fact that you liberate and allow people the opportunity to move with trending tools doesn't necessarily mean that will pose a threat to you, right? I think that if you suppress people more, then obviously you get things out of control. But the young people think that they needed to be listened to, issues that are related to job creation, opportunities for them to express their talents and fulfill their desires in life. Those things ought to be attention ought to be paid to these things.
Yeah, Something striking me right now is the similarities between the two of you. The two names are the same. I'm looking at your jackets are almost the same glasses. But many thanks, Isaac Kalechi. Isaac Kalechi is coming to us from Accra in Ghana. He is the one making this entire coverage a reality. And Isaac Mugabe is the one left on the screen right now. And Isaac Mugabe, many thanks to joining us right now. And of course, we will be glad to benefit from your, vast experience in covering the region. Isaac is a full East African and
unapologetically.
Unapologetically. Many thanks for joining us. And of course, also on the screen, as you can see, that is Isabel Brenda, who will be joining us much later to tell us on how the synthesis of this particular election. And many thanks to both of you to join us. And Isaac, let me just begin with you. Taking the cue from what Isaac Kalechi has told us, the internet is shut and it's slow. Why do we experience such issues during elections in Africa?
Thank you so much, George, for having me. It gives me so much pleasure to discuss regional matters. Personally, if I told you that I was surprised, no, I wasn't surprised that the internet would be switched off. We've seen this pattern in other countries, like in Uganda, in Kenya. I think it kind of also happened, also, although it didn't take on quite a long time. But I think politicians have kind of borrowed the script from the elections of 2021 in Uganda, where Museveni switched off the internet and banned the Facebook. And guess what? People maneuvered through the internet using VPN. Up to now, people are still using VPN to circumnavigate Facebook. Many of them are using Facebook, although it was banned. So you can read it between lines. So it's the same script that also Paul Biya, the one who was announced for the 8th time in Cameroon, activated just 2 days ago. We did that story. And so I wasn't surprised that it has happened in Tanzania. It was expected. And in the absence of allowing all voices to be heard, I'm talking about the media. So for Samia Suluhu, it was one of his best ace that she had kept, saying, I know the Gen Zs might come up, guns blazing, and when they go on social media platforms, they are unstoppable. So the machinery itself in Tanzania is wearing the power of the Gen Z, the power of social media, the power of, Twitter, Instagram, where the young generation can go and voice and vent their anger. That's why they switched off.
Yeah, and Brenda, taking on from what Isaac is saying, I mean, it borders, curtailing freedoms of expression, and in these spaces that many young people are using. Is it concerning to you as well?
First of all, good afternoon from Nairobi, Kenya. My name is Brenda Isabel, and it's lovely to have been invited here. I think it's very disheartening coming from Kenya and East Africa specifically to watch what is happening in Tanzania. It is literally a one-horse race. If we were supposed to, George, if we wanted to talk about, curtailing human rights or stopping freedom of speech, shutting down the internet, I think President Suluhu has done much worse than that. Basically, you have taken out opposition just because they refuse to sign a code of conduct. And the code of conduct, basically, because we're asking for reforms, I believe that an election is supposed to spring from a platform of equality where all the competing interests sit and agree on the rules of the game. But looking at what the party has done, what President Suluhu has done, I mean, CCM has been in power since independence. So this is not a surprise. It is very systemic. Tanzania looks good on paper, but it is far from it in terms of the state of the governance of the country. President Suluhu has just inherited what is a systemic retrogression of democracy, if you ask me, because this party has run elections ever since independence. And so what Tanzania likes to do is to make things look on paper as though it is a democratic country. I remember when the late John Magufuli died, the late president, when Samia Suluhu took over, one of the things that she did was to release prisoners, that people that were imprisoned by the former president, the late. And,
yeah, and I remember this herald, something that was seen as a new beginning.
Absolutely, but it is a smokescreen, because I am very sad that in fact it is a female president doing this, because knowing how much women have fought to get into office, political office, not just even the presidency, is something that we only dream about, you know? So looking at, some of us are working very hard to deconstruct barriers that impede
female
that
participation
stop
in
women from,
political space.
yes, from getting
Yeah.
into political office and representation. And this is what a female leader does. It is extremely sad knowing that she has, imprisoned and charged with treason opposition leader Tundu Lissu. And we have seen how how pressure knows no bounds. We have seen a trend where there's also a cooperation between repressive regimes. If you look at Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, recently when Tundu Lissu was presented in court, there was colleagues from Kenya that went to support, in solidarity, and they were also abducted and tortured. And you can imagine these are international human violations, where
Yeah,
you
and
now
Brenda, before we get to that,
Yeah.
Brenda, just allow me to interrupt, just to bring in Isaac as well. Isaac, what Brenda is, intimating is, the systemic retrogression in Tanzania, and you've reported in this region for quite some time, Isaac. Is this the lowest Tanzania has ever experienced?
Absolutely, because when the late Benjamin William Mkapa took over the helms from Hassan Mwinyi, it was the herald of Tanzania embracing multi-party politics, just like Kenya did in 1982. So everyone was glad that at last, the unitary party system of Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere was, going to be shelved, and the Ujamaa policy was going to be shelved. At last, we're going to see multi-party politics. But again, we have to remember where Tanzania is coming from. I mean, when you look at the Ujamaa policy that had greatly entrenched itself in society, even up to now, we still have some vestiges. It wouldn't be a walk in the park, just like other countries, like Kenya, for instance, or Uganda, tried to achieve to a certain extent in 1996. So perhaps when the current president, Samia Suluhu, came in and released, just like Isabel mentioned, and even opened up kind of media houses, freedom of speech, and also allowed, at certain extent, Freeman Bowie of Chadema to actively participate in politics, people relieved a sigh of relief, saying, finally, we are done with the authoritarian Magufuli, and we have a lady who's going to be like maybe former Liberian president is Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. But, well, one thing we don't have to forget is that Tanzania is a male chauvinist society. So to a certain extent also, Samia Suluhu thought that maybe, yes, that she had to show that she has arrived. There was some discontent within the CCM party who wanted to downplay her authority, who wanted to see her as a woman, not as a leader, befitting the stature of a president of the United Republic of Tanzania. So I think that kind of triggered her to act otherwise and say, I have to do something. Let's not forget that the previous two leaders, herself and the late John Pombe Magufuli, were acting on a template designed by previous leaders like Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete. So to an extent, this was a way, it's a calculated strategy by Samia Suluhu to stamp authority and send a warning to any dissenting voice that, by the way, I'm not yet done. I might come back for re-election in 5 years' time from now. And I can tell you she'll be the first president for Tanzania to rule more than the 10 years. But of course, I'm disappointed, maybe if I may say something tiny to touch on what also Isabel pointed out. I'm also disappointed, just like many people who thought that maybe this mother figure in Samia Suluhu was a beacon of hope for the country, and Tanzania would be a lesson, would be a point of reference for countries in the region that don't embrace society. don't embrace democracy. But I think the way is still a very long one. And
it's a long one indeed. It's a long one indeed, Isaac and Brenda, as you've intimated. And of course, just for the purposes of the people who are following us right now, Isabel Brenda is an electoral law and governance institute expert for Africa, and Isaac Mugabe is our reporter who's covered East Africa wide and largely unapologetically, as he said. And we are trying to synthesize, this particular election. We're talking about Tanzania 2025 elections, which has been marred by claims of the opposition, being denied the opportunity to participate free and fairly. And this speaks to political exclusion. The two are painting a very hopeless, picture. And as you know me, Isaac, I like being constructive. Brenda, so
we are painting the reality.
Yeah, there is a reality, yeah. But Brenda, is there a way out? Is there a way out if you're talking about, constructively, repairing what has already been broken?
I think that one of the things that we must appreciate about, and I love the fact that Isaac compared Kenya to Tanzania. We're neighbors, and we got our independence in 1963. The difference between Kenya and Tanzania is one of the things that we stand on, which is the greatest infrastructure.
Well, we seem to be losing Brenda. Is Samia interfering with the internet in Kenya as well, Isaac?
Maybe I can touch something about that particular point. It's never too late, but again, it's a little bit early for Tanzania to be like on the same footing like neighbors Kenya. There's so many things that must be done for all political inclusivity to be seen, to be realized.
Which are?
First of all, we know that a big percentage of the population in Tanzania still see themselves as a family unit under the former policy of Kambarage Nyerere, of Ujamaa, right? And before anything can be done, to allow that kind of opening up the political space, even those who want to be part of the opposition groups should see themselves as, first of all, being part of national building together with the CCM. I'm talking about not working together, even though we are the opposition within a ruling government. I see the bell is back before the internet goes. I will allow that first continue point.
Yeah. You can proceed, Brenda. I hope you're not experiencing the same internet issues.
Yeah, I think mine is also internet issue. It's raining cats and dogs in Nairobi. So apologies for that. Yeah. So I was saying that there is hope for Tanzania, but one of the things that they have to look into is making sure that their constitution is very strong. So what I've noticed the president doing is that with all the human rights violations that have happened, she sort of is able to use the state machinery to create a strong justification for oppressing people. For example, with the locking out opposition leaders, she said they refused to sign the code of conduct. When you look at it on paper, that looks like a very valid reason, but there's a political reason behind it. So I feel like if the infrastructure of Tanzania was strong enough in terms of their constitution, then I believe that they would experience, a better political environment and that democracy and good governance can thrive. However, one of the things that you must realize is even with the current constitution that Tanzania has, did you know that if a Tanzanian is caught reading the constitution, the state can come for you and say, we are suspecting you of doing something wrong? Imagine, the constitution is a law of the land where everybody in Kenya walks with a pocket-sized constitution in their wallet, in their bag, somewhere. But in Tanzania's case, even just if you're caught quoting something from the constitution, you're treated with a lot of suspicion and you could end up in trouble. So we're looking at a very heavily oppressive regime. And like I mentioned earlier, this is extremely systemic because this is what they've gone through from independence. But I must remind Tanzania, if any Tanzanian is watching, Tanzania is where Kenya was in 1992 when we removed President Moi from power. There was a one-party, of course, multipartyism came into Kenya, but KANU, which was a ruling party, was extremely strong. And the kind of oppression that we saw back then, it was seriously dark days. And I feel like that is where Tanzania is today. So the journey of democracy and good governance is taken in strides, a step at a time. So I pray that they will be resilient through these dark days. Of course, looking at the polls, all 37 million registered voters, I personally expect a low voter turnout because people don't have their preferred candidates on the ballot paper. And to make matters worse, this is the first time Tanzania has seen a 26% rise increase in terms of new registered voters, which means people were really hoping for change and praying for change. And I can only sympathize with our brothers across the border, but mine remains a message of strength and resilience. May they keep their head up. I pray that young people will be peaceful. It takes seconds to burn your country down, and it takes many, many years to rebuild it. We can reorganize, look at how do we empower young people. Social media is a big tool in the democracy space. So we now need to start thinking about elections and tech to see how to mobilize, better. And one of my almost last comments would be that President Samia Suluhu has undermined her own credibility in this election by locking out competition. So already as it is, I believe the president is a lame duck.
Yeah, Brenda, and I want us to talk about the credibility.
The credibility aspect will not hold, because if you look at the people that loot elections and steal elections and get into power, the center will not hold. And if you look at the uprisings across Africa, from Gen Zs in Kenya to Tanzania, Uganda, and everywhere else across the world, Nigeria, you honestly can tell that the center will not hold. You can steal power, sit in that office, but you will really have a hard time.
Yeah, and of course, the center may not hold, and because this is the live coverage of this election process happening, rather exercise happening in Tanzania, I would just like to update our viewers who are following us on our Facebook page and also YouTube page that news just coming in is that hundreds of people have been protesting and police station burned down in Tanzania's commercial capital, Dar es Salaam. And that is a report we are getting from our correspondents on the ground. And Naomi was to join us shortly, but of course there is also an issue of internet disruption nationwide. And the correspondents are saying that group have burned the police station along the Nelson Mandela Road, that is the main road from the city port. Then they gathered outside chanting, "We want our country back." Now, police fired tear gas, but were pushed back by a large group of protesters on the road who threw stones, and, the journalist added. And Isaac, before we started this particular, before I got to this, conversation with you, we played a clip from the president herself. And if Isaac Alechi is here, he can replay the clip again so that we can just appreciate what she said. Of course, those are, yeah, sure.
I would like to sincerely thank all journalists for their commendable work. I have been closely following the entire electoral process since this morning, and I am pleased to see comprehensive media coverage across the nation. After observing the proceedings and feeling confident in the process, I felt it was my time to step forward and fulfill my civic duty. I have cast my vote. Now, I strongly urge all Tanzanians who have not yet done so to come out, exercise their right, and vote for the leaders of their choice. Let us complete this democratic exercise diligently so we can collectively focus on advancing the development of our nation. Once again, I extend my gratitude to the media and kindly request that you continue to keep the country informed while encouraging every eligible citizen to participate fully in this important civic responsibility.
Na nimeona katika vyombo mbalimbali bado vinahamasisha watu waende wakapige kura. Basi niwashukuru kwa hili. Asanteni sana.
Yeah, the reason why I played that clip once again was, the president intimating that the process is ongoing smoothly. But of course, we've had the news coming in that there are some demonstrations, some sort of demonstrations in the capital, not the capital, but of course, a big city in Dar es Salaam. And Isaac, she's also pointed out that the media is doing its job.
Yes.
But we also know that, some international press were denied, access to cover this particular election. Maybe could you speak about that, Isaac?
I think, well, in all fairness, to begin with, Samia Suluhu says it's a very important exercise, and that's why she has come out. That is good, but I think she has made it less important. Secondly, she talks about the media. She's happy that it's being covered. But that's an irony. That's quite the opposite of the fact, because not every media personality or media house is allowed to report or to cover the elections. You can report inside. Some have been allowed to report inside, but not to cover the elections. And then when you look at where she was standing, doesn't it tell you something that maybe she's out there to vote with her personal security and maybe a few people from from her neighborhood? It speaks volumes.
You think it's staged?
It's not staged, but it speaks volumes. I mean, the voter turnout is quite disappointing, and you can't say it's important when people have decided to stay in their houses. And that's why maybe the reporters just told us that one of the reporters on the ground is reporting that they're banning police stations. Okay, instead of going to vote, that shows the level of disappointment that actually Tanzanians are going through. And without missing words, I think she's shooting her own foot. And for me, the medias have been covering, elections, and even in media, I'm speaking about over 20 years. Politicians seem to be cut from the same cloth. They never mean what they say, and they never say what they mean. You can think we live in totally parallel lines. There's a time, at least the previous elections in Uganda, where even the president himself said, oh, even though I won with a big margin, but I have evidence that the opposition stole my votes. Yet actually, stations, they never allow people to vote. So I think for me, Tanzanians are treating the path of safety first. And I think I would do the same. If I don't have the possibility of choosing my own candidate, assuming I had a chance to do, why would it bother me to go to a polling station and if I know my vote won't count? So the level of voter apathy is really very high. And when you have a leader who's kind of detached from what the people really want or expected of her in this election, then it's quite absurd.
Yeah, and for sure, we all agree that President Samia Suluhu is going to win this election, and people have been saying
no. She's going to be announced as the winner. These are two different things.
But with all due fairness as well, Brenda and Isaac, with all due fairness, we know that there are other, participating presidential candidates. We've also highlighted when we began this live coverage, who have been promising Tanzanians what they are also offering. But of course, people have been terming them as minor presidential candidates. But still, they are presidential candidates were supposed to politically legitimize this exercise. So, Brenda, if you were a Tanzanian and you made intimated on this point that there was an increase in voter registration, about 26%, to rise it to 37.6 million people. So, if you were a Tanzanian, would you come out and perform your civic duty?
If I was a Tanzanian, for sure, I would be somewhere incarcerated or in prison, because I normally I don't like oppression. So anyone that tries to, I speak my mind, and I would probably be leading a movement, against the kind of atrocities we're witnessing. However, on a normal day, of course, I would come out to cast my vote. But the vote must count. Elections are very important democratic exercises, and I think for Africa, elections is a very emotive issue. The cost of living is very high. I mean, we have a youth bulge. There's no jobs. These are who we are seeing in the streets called the Gen Zs. They were told, go to school, get these grades, and you will get a job, and your life will be good. And what we're seeing is just, we are paying taxes and fattening cows, in for lack of better terms. I mean, the kind of looting and plunder that we see in our countries, the kind of lives and opulence that we see from our leaders is very disheartening, knowing that we're really suffering down at the grassroots, you know. So sometimes when people see a revolt, these people are not just revolting for nothing. There's a reason behind it. So I feel like it is very insensitive to remove all the major competition. Of course, like you mentioned, Dochewela being a very, honest media station, you would highlight, at least for the world to see, that there were other candidates on the ballot. But George, allow me to just tell you, of course, you've taken out the major competition, so the rest are just to cleanse this process, so that
No, but you
the
cannot say that. They're also offering themselves for the top job.
they're offering themselves for the top job. But when you remove the strong and heavy parties, and then you leave a few smaller, not really small political movements, but if you remove the main competition, obviously you want to win unopposed. That's what I mean. And also, a majority of Tanzanians were banking on the people that have been taken off the ballot for one reason or the other. So I believe it is very unfair to do that to your country, and quite insensitive to come out and tell people that come out and exercise your democratic right. I feel like Africa, we need to expand this word democratic from our vocabulary, because we use it so loosely without really thinking through about what that truly means for the people. And also, yeah.
Yeah. And Isaac, maybe before I get back to you again, Brenda, Isaac, how does she now, the president, reconcile, and all these factors, and lead a nation towards, a democratic space? What would you advise her to do, or the CCM party, so to speak?
I think they'll have to go back to the drawing board and see how they can really not necessarily turn things around, but do better. And I will agree with Isabel. I think we loosely use the word democracy and democratic values, etc. I would suggest that maybe even leaders stop using it until they've really upped their game to a level that there won't be any qualms for anyone being disillusioned, for that matter. I believe CCM, under the tuteleship of Samia Suluhu, they should do a thorough post-mortem after the election, after they've been announced as winners, not after they've won the election. That's according to me. And see how they can really put into consideration the concerns of the voters, particularly the youth. The clip that you played last, where there's a young man saying he hopes that the leaders will listen to them, and in 5 years' time, right, they can have a big role to play. I think the youth, the Gen Z in Kenya, are trying to give them time to rethink how best they can do things. Those, I think it was a production, you call it the 7%.
Yeah,
exactly. They're really humble and cool, and the way they were articulating their points, what they expect from their leaders. If I was Samia Suluhu or anyone from the CCM, I would really listen to their concerns before we see what they can do that happened in Kenya, what they can do that happened in Morocco, what they can do that happened in Nepal, because nowadays the Jains, or even in Mozambique, it's not very far from Tanzania. They border the country. But this is what exactly my concern. Are they, the leaders of the CCM, watching the news or watching the things around them, not going very far? Just in neighboring Kenya, their neighbors, who in 1992 said, okay, we've successfully ejected the dictator in the name of Daniel Arap Moi. Now we're going to work together with forming all the necessary alliances. It's not a missed opportunity already for Samia Suluhu, even though many people have written her off that, hey, you're missing out so many things.
Yeah, and Isaac, I would like to pick it from what you're saying, forming of alliances. And then, Brenda,
yes,
you will appreciate that in this particular election, we have 17 presidential candidates from, smaller opposition parties. And this begs the question, is the opposition also, part of the problem? Because, say, if they were to come together, then they would give the CCM a run for its money.
Well, I honestly would not fault the opposition for having too many small parties, because democracy is always about, you choosing who you want. And we're trying to encourage, especially young people, women, youth, to go into, try and get into public office and vice. So personally, for me, I feel like the strategy you're mentioning, George, might have worked better, considering they're dealing with a very repressive regime. However, it is fairly okay to have multiple partners, but just if the rules were fair, I feel like Tanzania would have a good day at the ballot, and it wouldn't matter who won, for as long as they exercise their democratic right and their vote counted. So for me, my heart is really broken for Tanzania, because I can see even on the screen as you project, George, there's people of all manner of ages. There's young people, there's older people that truly believe that their votes count, and it should count. So for me, this is just this is a blow for democracy, in terms of the fact that the competition has been taken up, the very strong competition. So, and then of course the rest of the people that are on the ballot are left there as stooges to sanitize the win of Samia Suluhu. So I think it's rather unfortunate.
Sanitizing or not, that is a decision for Tanzanians to tell us about. And I want us to now draw ourselves to how the CCM, has been able to, repackage itself in elections year in, year out, and them still remaining in power to date, whereby, long-term political parties, independence parties have lost fashion among the young people, but we're still seeing the CCM, growing strong, Isaac. Do you think they are doing something that the opposition should borrow a leaf? Because being there for 64 years, it's quite a long time.
I mean, it takes you back on when it was formed or under which principles it was formed. Like I mentioned earlier, it was formed under national unity and identity, under the Ujamaa that Julius Kambarage Nyerere introduced. When you look at it, it wasn't a bad idea, because it brought people together to live as a family. Yes. But look, times change, and I think it's the last party, post-independence party, that is governing a country. And some parties have evolved, to be more pragmatic, to allow also not dissenting voices, but also voices perceived to be from the opposition, working together. But this CCM has greatly entrenched itself within Tanzania, that even any idea, however positive it may be, as long as it's not aligned from what the elder members of the party think about it, then it is taken as dissent. And a quick example that actually Isabel talked about was, if I was to consult the Constitution to speak about my rights as a media practitioner, that can be perceived as dissenting, right? You must tout the line that the leader is saying, and then because there's that list of who follows after the other, there's no room for the young people as we speak at the moment, compared to other countries. So that repackaging, it needs to be done like yesterday. Otherwise, it's one of the party that will go in oblivion as one that had a chance to rule the country for more than 5 decades, but missed out the opportunity of involving or changing with the tales of time by involving the young generation, who are becoming more powerful, by the way. It's good. They're still a bit docile in Tanzania. They're scared of maybe going to the streets. But I hope, God forbid, by end of the day, things won't have got out of hand. Like reports are coming in telling us that, police stations are being banned. And you can imagine they're targeting police stations. Why? They're venting their anger towards the very people who they know are going to clamp down on them, towards the very people they know that the system is using to really harass them, the very people they know that are not allowing them to go and exercise their civic duty that the President Samia Suluhu was talking about. But we saw herself, she's at the polling station that is empty, virtually empty. I could even, count out the people who are at the polling station.
You could argue, Isaac, because it was a little bit early, and maybe some people will be coming in later on.
Just let me tell you one thing.
Will be closing
where the head of state will go to vote, to cast their vote, there are so many people there, even wishing to shake the hand of the president, whoever it is. I've covered so many elections, and I've seen this. I've seen media jostling to take that picture of her, of the president take or catch the ballot, but I didn't see it in the frame that you played when that you had. You said
maybe just to clarify, that polling station is within the precincts of the State House, so that's why it could be a no-go zone for many people. But of course, much appreciated on your point, Isaac. Just to remind the people who are just joining us right now that this is live coverage on Tanzania's election, and Tanzanians are currently participating in an election that President Samia Suluhu Hassan is expected to win after candidates from two leading opposition parties were barred from standing. And now, in addition to the presidential election, voters across the East African nation are choosing members of their country's 400-seat parliament and lawmakers in the semi-autonomous Zanzibar. And our reporters on the ground are following this particular historic exercise. And we joined, of course, by Isaac Mugabe, one of our experienced journalists who's covered East Africa widely, and of course, Brenda Isabel, who is an expert on these political issues and governance issues as well. So, Brenda, of course, the elections is not, holding in the mainland Tanzania alone, but also in Zanzibar. Maybe as we draw towards the conclusion of this conversation, do you think things are working in Zanzibar compared to the mainland?
Yes, I think I was watching something earlier. Thank you so much, George, for your question. I think everything seems to be flowing smoothly in Zanzibar. I believe this is because this is where the presidential candidate, Samia Suluhu, who is also the current president, comes from. So obviously, she must have very strong support from her backyard, and it is expected, Yeah. So I feel like when I watch things happening in Zanzibar, it's very different from these other areas. The mood, elections has so many things. The mood. You look at the amount of security officials poured on the ground. I feel like there's very little resistance expected from Zanzibar as compared to other sections of Tanzania.
Isaac, maybe just to update our followers who may not understand how the electoral process happen in Tanzania, could you tell us what happens in the mainland and also in comparison to what is happening in the archipelago in Zanzibar?
Of course, the archipelago of Zanzibar, they have states that they are entitled to, that it's their cut, whichever way it goes. I think the 54 seats that have to come from Zanzibar. And always, even though these two, mainland and Zanzibar, are quite, parallels when they come to political understanding of their issues, at least we've seen a semblance of tolerance in Zanzibar, just like the CCM candidate, the son of Hassan Mwinyi, Al Hassan Mwinyi, is Hussein Mwinyi. He's the leading candidate of CCM, and we have ACT Wazalendo taking part under Othman Masood. Wazalendo was of Lohan on mainland, who was denied,
the participation. Yeah.
So that tells you that speaks volumes. At least there's a level of tolerance, perhaps because they're united in a way that they know how they're treated, badly treated, if I may put it that way, on mainland. But still, they have their 54 seats reserved for their, whichever way it goes, that would be part of the parliament.
Well, having said that, now towards the end of this conversation, Brenda, maybe to the young Tanzanian who is following, we earlier on spoke to one of them who said that he is boycotting this particular exercise, but the fight and the push for political, inclusion is still unending. And he is projecting hope that, of course, they're not just fighting for this particular exercise of, participating in this election, but also to just have a, democratic space within Tanzania. What will you tell other youths to emulate?
I think to start off, I just want to commend the youth of Tanzania. I believe that they have conducted themselves in a way that most African countries would not have. Tanzanians are normally, in East Africa, they're known as gentle.
Maybe Isaac, we can pick it up here. And Isaac, I want you, as we wait for Brenda to come and specifically address the issue of hope to the young people. Tanzania is a critical state within East Africa. And just in your views, what does this election mean to the East African region?
I think for me, I wouldn't say that there is a lot to learn from what is happening in Tanzania. And perhaps that's why when they see themselves more of part of SADC than the East African community. Remember the activists that Isabel spoke about, that were arrested in Tanzania. Samia Suluhu herself sent a strong warning, not to the youth, he spoke to Ruto and the leadership of Kenya, saying, I mean, those neighbors, some of our neighbors have failed to manage their country, and they're trying to bring confusion or destabilization in our own country. So it tells you that Samia Suluhu wants to kind of play a one-man game together with the CCM. So for me, there are no lessons countries can borrow from Tanzania. Remember, Uganda, it's just in 2 months' time, they'll go to the polls. So you want to tell them that Uganda should do the same, although all signs are showing that it won't be the first time also they do it. It won't be a surprise anyway. But for me, I'm deeply disappointed by Tanzania.
Yeah. I know Isaac is deeply disappointed. And Brenda, you are talking about the hope to the young people. And I don't want you to teach Tanzanians, bad habits that you're doing in Kenya. But of course, what would you tell the young people in Tanzania?
We will definitely inject the Kenyan spirit into Tanzania, you best believe, because we are neighbors and we love each other. And Tanzania is a wonderful country full of so much promise. And especially being one of their next door neighbors, we trade a lot between Kenya and Tanzania. So Tanzanians are partly, citizens of East Africa, and we love each other. One of the things that I would tell young people is that let us also be mindful of some of the political parties that we follow, because it must stand for the ideals that we represent as a people. CCM, the ruling party that has ruled from 1961, is CCM stands for Chama cha Mapinduzi. In Swahili, that means the party for reforms. But it is a contradiction, because they do not stand for reforms. In fact, for an opposition leader to say that I don't think these rules are fair, I would like reforms, he's currently in prison and charged with treason. So you can imagine how just following political parties blindly is something that can cause so many problems to a country. So what my advice to young people is that you have come of age to also stand in and vie for participate in the political discourse. But more importantly, Tanzania, you have a lot of work to do in terms of deconstructing, the authoritarian systems that are set in your country. One of the places that I would implore you to look into is your constitution. As much as it's almost illegal to be caught reading the constitution publicly, it is your right. So it's going to be a push. It is not going to be easy. I know where we were in 1992, and I believe this is where Tanzania is today. So also, as Isaac mentioned earlier, it is unfair to compare our democracies, because we have experienced certain things in our political and governance environment that has, brought about the result that you see today in terms of awareness of the people. So I just believe that I'm happy, because I feel like this is the first time I am seeing Tanzania up in arms, because normally they just relax and things are happening and they're like, okay, we'll move on. But for the first time, I've seen Tanzanians stand up. And I must commend the young people, because they're the ones that started this movement of saying no reform, no elections. So the election day is here. We personally, as a Kenyan and an East African, I'm very happy that you are pushing for reforms. Be that as it may, we may not have seen the kind of reforms you are looking for, but the fact that you push for it will always be in history, that there was pushback from the people, irrespective of what the result of the presidential election is today.
Isaac, any closing remarks?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just want to talk something very small about the youth or the Gen Zs. Yeah, like Isabel mentions, you can't compare them from the youth movements in Kenya back at the universities of Nairobi. The politics we see in Kenya now started at the University of Nairobi, when the likes of Miguna, were were having running riots with the police, which
Miguna.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, when even that the Attorney General of that time, who I don't want to mention his name, I mean, really was ruthless when it came to dealing with what he thought were lawbreakers. So at least for the Tanzanian youth, we're trying to take it slow, but I think they said this is their time, and we hope that the government will listen to them. But all kudos to the Gen Zs of Tanzania. They're not in the streets rioting, but when push comes to shove, what happens? When you overpress the nose, it bleeds. When you put someone so much on the wall, they have to look for a way. So CCM under Samia Suluhu and our henchmen, they should be mindful of that the more they press the youth, the more the youth themselves will think of alternative measures, George.
Many thanks, Isaac Mugabi. Of course, Isaac Mugabi is our colleague here in DW Africa, one of our experienced journalists who've covered the region quite vastly and for many years. Your insights were valid and much appreciated, Isaac. Also, we had Brenda Isabel. Brenda, many thanks. Brenda is governance and political activism, or how would you call it, Brenda?
Yeah, I'm actually elections, gender specialist, governance, all that. Yeah.
Many thanks, Brenda,
Also
for
an
joining us.
activist, yes.
Yeah, sure. Many thanks for joining us. We much appreciate. And of course, if you're just joining us right now, we're coming to the tail end of this particular live coverage of Tanzania's 2025 elections. And 37.6 million Tanzanians eligible to vote are expected to, cast their ballot. The president has already done so and called on all Tanzanians to join in the same fashion, just to perform their civic duty. We've been, getting reports from the ground. We have our correspondents and reporters tucked in every place in Tanzania telling us what is happening. And one of the key issue that is a key highlight that is happening right now is that protests have erupted in Tanzania, and hundreds protesters in the largest city have teared down banners of President Samia Suluhu and banned a police station as the East Africa country went to the polls in an elections where main challengers have either been jailed, and we're talking about Tundu Lissu of Chadema, or barred from standing, and that is the ACT Wazalendo candidate, that is Luhaga Mpina. And despite heavy security in the commercial capital, Dar es Salaam, with tanks stationed around key junctions, and that is the situation currently, young people have taken to the streets singing, "We want our country back." Yet in other areas, also the voting exercise is going on as planned. Polls opened at 6 a.m. and are expected to close at 6 p.m. Tanzanian time. 37.6 million are eligible to vote, and most of them are already, turning up to perform this civic duty. And we are monitoring to just update you what is happening on the ground. Another issue that is worth noting is that there is a nationwide disruption to internet connectivity, and that is confirmed by NetBlocks, who've reported on a nationwide disruption of internet. There is likely low voter turnout, and as we've tried to dissect the entire, process, is because of denial of key competitors, participation that may have, dampened the spirits of people who are supporting these key political leaders, and that is the ACT Wazalendo and also the Chadema party. Isaac Kalechi was joining me from Ghana. Isaac, if you can just come back. I don't know if Isaac is back with us. Well, it seems that we're not having them. And Isaac, many thanks. And Brenda, also many thanks. That comes to the end of this particular live coverage. Many thanks. Well, I'm still sticking around because Isaac Kalechi must come back and help us end this particular one. And if you are interested to follow on what is happening in Tanzania, of course, our YouTube page and also the Facebook page are still rolling with real-time updates on what is happening on the ground. We have our correspondents around the country and also across our multi-platforms within DW. This election coverage is being brought up to date. And Isaac, you left me hanging on the screen, Isaac. What's up with you? That is Isaac Kalechi, who was helping us to manage this particular live coverage. And as we've said, Isaac, of course, we shall be continuing to update our followers and our viewers, listeners on our multi-platforms on what is happening in Tanzania. Maybe your closing remarks, Isaac, and how maybe Ghana is following the happenings in Tanzania.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was obviously the appropriate coverage we could give to Tanzania because of the difficulties, obviously, with access to the grounds, internet connectivity, and all that. But I think that we've given the world a fair preview, of course, or maybe an outlook of what is happening in Tanzania. And I'm sure we'll continue to follow. Of course, people in West Africa obviously follow what's happening in East Africa. And definitely, I'm sure that people who obviously believe that President Hassan obviously is just going to be announced as the winner. It's not like about whether they're expecting whether someone is going to beat her. But obviously, I think what is important is for people to see that there isn't much violence or any kind of agitation that could spiral things out of control. But of course, the hope is that, yes, democracy as we've been practiced across Africa will improve. It's important for people, leaders, to allow for open contestation with people. It's a contestation of ideas, and let citizens decide who really governs them. And we should allow free media, free press as well. And the challenges that some international media houses have had, like ours, especially in getting that kind of access we want, could improve in coming elections in other countries.
Yeah, Isaac, before I let you go, and before you end this entire coverage, I'm sure you're working on a piece on one of our formats called The Flip Side, and it's a piece on if elections still do matter in Africa. Maybe could you tell us the inspiration behind that piece and what we should expect from it?
Yeah, I mean, elections have been taking place in Africa for many years now, since African countries adopted democracy. But again, with election comes a lot of mistrust, right? There are many people who don't believe that, well, their vote counts. They think that incumbents will manipulate the system. Election management bodies are manipulated. And obviously, there's ballot staffing and all those things happening across elections. So the question obviously is that, and if young people especially, are losing trust in elections, I mean, is that not going to be counterproductive really to the democracy we are talking about? It's important for us to talk about these things and make sure that elections don't become just rituals that obviously just solidify people who are
I think we're losing Isaac Kalechi, but of course he's drawing the inspiration on the centrality that elections play within our African spaces. And just to strengthen democracy, we spoke earlier on to experts who were saying we should not overuse the word democracy because sometimes it is losing its meaning within the continent. But yeah, we can't just give up, but also just to do our roles. Ours is just to bring the conversation, and it's upon you people to make your minds, and that is the slogan DW is made for minds, bringing the conversations that are pertinent to the people and allowing them to make their choices. And one of the choices that you have to make is, choosing a leader who will lead you for like 5 years, which is always the space within many democracies in Africa. Isaac Kalechi, a very serious journalist, I must say, and a man who does the Lord's work from Ghana. And he's been the person who's helped us to manage all this successful YouTube and Facebook live coverage of Tanzania's 2025 elections, and of course, the entire team behind making this live coverage a success. Many thanks for joining us, and at this juncture, we have to call it a day, and we shall be updating you on real-time updates on what is going on in Tanzania on our platform. Remember, DW Africa is our YouTube name. DW Africa is our Facebook name. DW Africa is where you can get us on TikTok. And also, if you need also some real-time updates and you like reading, you can log into our website, dw.com, and /Africa is where you will get everything that is happening in Tanzania collated in a very organized way for you to be able to consume. They call me George Okachi. Many thanks for watching.